It was a crisp autumn evening in 1992, and the sun was dipping low over the dense Oregon forests. Mary Thompson, a 32-year-old single mother, had just finished a long day at the diner she managed in the small coastal town of Brookhaven. Her son, Lucas, a bright and curious 10-year-old with a love for toy cars and comic books, had been begging her all week to take the scenic route home. That night, Mary finally agreed, thinking it would be a small adventure before the dark winter months set in. They left the diner in their dusty blue station wagon, waving goodbye to neighbors who assumed it was just another ordinary evening. The drive began uneventfully, with the radio playing soft rock hits from the early 90s and Lucas chatting excitedly about the comic books he had borrowed from the library earlier that day. But as the car wound along Highway 101, the fog began to roll in from the Pacific, thick and heavy, wrapping the road in a gray-white shroud. Mary slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tightly, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar bends and twists. The highway, normally quiet at night, seemed unusually still, almost eerie. No cars passed them, no headlights in the distance, only the hum of the engine and the occasional hoot of an owl echoing through the trees. As they approached a sharp curve near an old, abandoned rest stop, Lucas pointed excitedly to a dilapidated sign, asking if they could explore it sometime. Mary chuckled nervously, promising another day. But just moments later, a loud thud, like metal hitting rock, echoed in the distance. Mary glanced around, tense, but saw nothing. She chalked it up to a fallen branch or an animal in the fog. She had no idea that within the next few minutes, her life and Lucas's would change forever. Somewhere along that lonely stretch of highway, Mary's station wagon simply vanished. Witnesses later recalled seeing a lone car parked unusually on the roadside earlier that day, but no one connected it to her disappearance at the time. There were no skid marks, no sign of struggle, and the faint tire tracks disappeared into the fog, as if swallowed by the night itself. Local law enforcement arrived hours later, alerted by concerned neighbors who hadn't seen Mary return home. But the station wagon was gone, and so were Mary and Lucas, leaving behind only an empty highway and a growing sense of dread. Rumors spread quickly through the small town. Some claimed they saw shadows moving near the forest edge that night, while others whispered about strange lights along the highway. Mary was a careful driver, and Lucas was always by her side. There was no reason for them to disappear voluntarily. Every theory seemed more terrifying than the last, and as the night grew colder, the town of Brookhaven realized something far more sinister than a simple missing persons case was unfolding. The quiet coastal road, once familiar and safe, had become a corridor of fear, a place where the ordinary had turned inexplicably dark. The morning after Mary and Lucas vanished, the town of Brookhaven was in shock. Police officers arrived at the Thompson home, greeted only by the eerie stillness of an untouched living room and a half-eaten dinner on the kitchen table. Mary's purse, keys, and wallet were all missing, but her son's backpack sat neatly by the door. Detectives immediately began piecing together the timeline, retracing Mary's route along Highway 101 and speaking to anyone who might have seen them that evening. But the fog had obscured much, and witnesses were few. The highway that had always seemed safe now felt like a corridor into the unknown. Search teams scoured the surrounding forests, using flashlights to cut through the dim light and calling out for Mary and Lucas. Dogs were brought in to catch their scent, but even the most experienced tracking animals faltered. Creeks and rivers were combed carefully, and abandoned cabins were inspected, yet the mother and son were nowhere to be found. Every lead seemed to vanish as quickly as it appeared, leaving officers frustrated and the townspeople on edge. Posters were printed and distributed, but as the days passed, sightings reported by locals proved to be either false alarms or dead ends. The state police eventually joined the investigation, bringing in helicopters and search dogs to cover the dense, rugged terrain around Highway 101. Detectives conducted door-to-door interviews, questioning travelers and truckers who regularly used the route. Tips flowed in from surrounding counties, some credible, others less so. One caller insisted they had seen a woman and child walking along the foggy road late at night, waving for help, but when authorities retraced the claim, there was no evidence to support it. Each failed lead added to the growing frustration, painting a picture of a mystery that refused to yield even the smallest clue. Local news outlets picked up the story, highlighting the disappearance in daily bulletins and broadcasts. The town's residents organized volunteer search parties, combing every wooded trail and roadside ditch. Yet, despite tireless efforts, the trail remained cold. People began to whisper about darker possibilities, accidents, foul play, or something even stranger lurking in the shadows of the forest. Mary had been a careful, loving mother, and Lucas a cautious child. The idea that they could simply vanish without a trace seemed impossible. But the evidence, or the lack of it, spoke for itself. Months turned into years, and the case slowly began to fade from national attention. Police files grew thicker with reports, yet the mystery remained unsolved. The town of Brookhaven could not escape the shadow of that night. Every time a car drove down Highway 101 or fog rolled in from the coast, locals were reminded of the mother and son who disappeared without a trace. The investigation had become more than a search for two missing people. It had become a haunting question mark, suspended over the community, leaving everyone to wonder what truly happened along that lonely stretch of Oregon Highway. As the weeks turned into months after Mary and Lucas disappeared, the small town of Brookhaven became a hotbed for speculation. Every corner cafe and gas station seemed to echo with whispers about what might have happened. Locals offered their own theories, some rational, some bordering on the fantastical. Some believed the duo had been victims of a tragic car accident somewhere along the foggy stretch of Highway 101, their vehicle swallowed by the dense forest or hidden in some forgotten ravine. Others feared something far darker, a stranger lurking along the road, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Travelers who passed the highway at night began reporting strange sightings. Some claimed to see a woman and child walking along the foggy shoulder, illuminated briefly by passing headlights, only to vanish when anyone slowed down. Others mentioned seeing fleeting figures in the trees or hearing cries carried on the wind, though no one could confirm these claims. Local teenagers dared each other to drive down the road after dark, fueled by curiosity and fear, and returned with stories that seemed more like urban legend than fact. Yet, with every report, the mystery only grew deeper. Speculation wasn't limited to sightings alone. Some residents dug into old criminal records and past news stories, looking for anyone in the area with a history of abductions or violence. Names were whispered cautiously in grocery stores and barbershops, theories traded as fact without any proof. Some believed Mary had fled town willingly, taking Lucas to start a new life, while others were certain that the highway itself held a sinister secret, an abandoned building, a hidden tunnel, or even a network of criminals operating quietly for years. Each idea seemed plausible to someone, yet impossible to prove. Despite the rumors, law enforcement remained focused on the evidence, or lack thereof. Detectives dismissed many of the claims as unreliable, yet even the most skeptical officers couldn't completely ignore the patterns emerging from repeated sightings. The fog, the empty stretches of highway, and the abandoned rest stops became part of a narrative that almost seemed alive. It wasn't just a case of missing persons anymore. It had evolved into a living legend, whispered to newcomers and recounted by those who remembered the night vividly. The uncertainty gnawed at the town. Parents grew nervous sending their children anywhere near the highway, and visitors spoke in hushed tones about the haunted road. Every news story that revisited the disappearance only fanned the flames of speculation. People began to wonder if the mother and son had simply walked into the forest and disappeared, or if some unknown hand had intervened. With no answers, the theories multiplied, each more unsettling than the last. The question remained, how could two careful, ordinary people vanish so completely, leaving behind only shadows and suspicion? Over the years, Highway 101 continued to serve as the main artery along Oregon's rugged coast, a road that connected sleepy towns and dense forests. To the casual traveler, it was just another scenic drive, with winding curves and breathtaking views of the Pacific Ocean. But for the residents of Brookhaven, it was a place of unease, forever haunted by the disappearance of Mary and Lucas. Locals avoided driving late at night, especially in the thick fog that often rolled in from the ocean, cloaking the highway in ghostly gray. The highway itself had become a silent witness to the unanswered questions that had lingered for decades. Construction crews and road maintenance teams worked tirelessly over the years to keep the highway safe. Old bridges were demolished and rebuilt, potholes patched, and guardrails replaced. Every time machinery rumbled across the asphalt, the faint memory of the lost mother and son resurfaced among workers who had grown up hearing the story. Yet, despite the constant human activity, no trace of Mary or Lucas ever emerged. The highway seemed to guard its secrets carefully, hiding evidence under layers of concrete, soil, and time, almost as if it were a living entity protecting the mystery it had witnessed. Some sections of the highway were especially treacherous, with cliffs dropping into dense forest below and thick vegetation encroaching dangerously close to the asphalt. Travelers occasionally reported seeing abandoned structures along the roadside, old rest stops, shuttered motels, and rusting cabins, but no one connected these sites to the disappearance at the time. They were simply forgotten relics of a bygone era, yet in hindsight, they were eerily significant. These buildings, neglected and decaying, would later become the key to unraveling a mystery that had remained unsolved for more than a quarter of a century. As the decades passed, Highway 101 became a canvas for urban legends. Locals warned tourists about the vanishing curve, a stretch of road where cars supposedly flickered in and out of sight, and about the abandoned rest stop where no one dared to linger after dark. Some claimed that if you drove slowly and watched carefully, you could catch glimpses of fleeting shadows near the forest line, though no one could say for sure what they were seeing. The highway, once ordinary and reliable, had become an ominous passage, a place where the past seemed to linger just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. By the time a major demolition project began in 2018, 26 years after the disappearance, Highway 101 had changed dramatically. Crews were tasked with tearing down old structures to make way for modern expansions. It was during this routine work that the highway's long-held secret would finally be disturbed. For decades, the road had seemed indifferent to the mystery it had silently witnessed, but the rumble of heavy machinery and the pounding of hammers would awaken the past in a way no one could have predicted. The forgotten highway, once a mere route for daily travelers, was about to reveal the horrifying truth it had hidden for a generation. It was a crisp morning in 2018 when the demolition crew arrived to begin tearing down an old, abandoned roadside building along Highway 101. The structure had been empty for decades, its paint peeling, windows shattered, and roof sagging under years of neglect. For the workers, it was just another assignment, routine, uneventful, and forgettable. Yet, as they pried up sections of the concrete floor with crowbars and jackhammers, one worker noticed something unusual, a small, metallic glint buried beneath a thick layer of dust and debris. At first, it seemed like an old toolbox or part of the building's plumbing, but curiosity forced them to investigate further. As the team carefully cleared the area, the object began to reveal itself, a small, rusted metal box, partially embedded in the concrete. It was heavy and cold to the touch, and the worker's heart raced as he lifted the lid. Inside were old belongings frozen in time, Mary Thompson's worn leather wallet, Lucas's small toy car, and photographs showing the mother and son smiling innocently in the sun. The discovery sent chills through the crew. These were not just old possessions. They were undeniable proof that Mary and Lucas had been there, hidden and forgotten, for more than 26 years. Word of the find spread quickly. Police were called immediately, and soon forensic teams arrived with gloves, cameras, and tools to carefully excavate the area. Every corner of the crumbling building was scrutinized for further evidence. The metal box, initially small and innocuous, had opened the door to a nightmare. Officers realized that the location, once overlooked and dismissed as just another abandoned structure along the highway, held the key to one of Oregon's most haunting mysteries. What had been ignored for decades was now front and center, demanding answers that had long been denied. The atmosphere at the site was tense and surreal. The demolition crew, once just routine workers, found themselves witnesses to something far beyond their daily jobs. Local residents gathered anxiously nearby, the fog rolling in from the Pacific making the scene feel even more ominous. Reporters from nearby towns arrived, cameras flashing, as the magnitude of the discovery became clear. The highway, once a silent corridor of unanswered questions, had finally begun to speak. It whispered of hidden lives, lost time, and secrets that refused to stay buried. As the excavation continued, investigators found more items scattered beneath the decaying building, clothes, personal effects, and traces that hinted at the grim reality of what had happened. Each new item added weight to the chilling story. A mother and son, gone for decades, had been concealed right along a well-traveled highway, their absence unnoticed for a generation. For everyone present, the workers, the police, the residents, the realization was staggering. A place that had seemed ordinary and mundane for years was now the epicenter of horror, revealing the truth in a way no one could have anticipated. Once the metal box and its contents were recovered, the investigators realized the horrifying scope of what they had uncovered. For 26 years, Mary and Lucas Thompson had been lost, their fate unknown, yet lying just beneath the feet of countless travelers on Highway 101. Forensic teams worked meticulously, carefully excavating the decaying building and the surrounding soil. What they found next was almost too grim to comprehend. Skeletal remains, partially hidden under the rubble, that matched the ages and sizes of Mary and Lucas. DNA testing confirmed the unimaginable. This was the mother and son who had vanished so long ago. The news hit Brookhaven like a storm. Families who had lived with the uneasy mystery for decades were forced to confront the terrifying reality. How could two ordinary people vanish and remain hidden in plain sight for so long? Experts speculated on the conditions that might have concealed the remains so thoroughly: years of decay, layers of construction, and the isolation of the abandoned building. Yet even with explanations, a sense of horror lingered. The idea that human lives had been trapped and forgotten for more than a quarter of a century was almost unbearable to fathom. As investigators pieced together the timeline, the building itself became a central piece of the puzzle. It appeared that Mary and Lucas had somehow ended up inside the structure on that fateful night in 1992. Whether it was accidental, forced, or the result of foul play was still unknown. The walls that had once been ignored as dilapidated and empty now seemed sinister, almost alive, having kept secrets hidden for decades. Every detail, the concrete, the rusted nails, the cracks in the floors, spoke of a story frozen in time, a nightmare that had gone unnoticed while life carried on around it. For the demolition crew who discovered the remains, the experience was surreal. Men and women who had simply been performing a routine job now found themselves witnesses to a horror story decades in the making. Police and forensic teams worked around them, each new piece of evidence deepening the sense of dread. Even the air felt heavy, thick with the weight of the past and the tragic lives that had been contained within those walls. Locals who visited the site described a chilling silence, broken only by the occasional creak of old wood and the distant roar of the highway above. The haunting truth extended beyond the physical discovery. For Mary's family, and even the community, the emotional weight was staggering. Years of unanswered questions, imagined horrors, and rumors finally collided with the undeniable fact: Mary and Lucas had been gone, hidden, and forgotten for decades. The shocking reality forced everyone to re-examine the events of 1992, to wonder how the ordinary could become the unthinkable, and to confront a terrifying question that lingered in every shadow of Highway 101. What else had gone unnoticed for so long? Even after the discovery of Mary and Lucas's remains, the town of Brookhaven was left with more questions than answers. How had they ended up in the abandoned building along Highway 101? Had they sought shelter and become trapped, or had someone deliberately hidden them there? Investigators examined the scene meticulously, but the evidence offered little clarity. Every item, every clue, seemed to raise new possibilities rather than provide solutions. The mother and son had been silent witnesses to their own fate for decades, and now, even in death, they offered no explanation. Locals struggled to reconcile the reality with the rumors that had circulated for years. The vanishing highway stories, the strange sightings, and the whispered tales suddenly felt closer to truth than fiction. People wondered if they had unknowingly driven past the building countless times, oblivious to the tragic secret it concealed. The mind-numbing thought that an ordinary stretch of road could hide such horror for decades made residents question their sense of safety and the very nature of the world around them. Every foggy morning and shadowed curve of Highway 101 became a reminder of the unanswered questions that haunted the community. Law enforcement faced the daunting task of reopening a case frozen in time. Detectives attempted to reconstruct the events of 1992, examining old reports, interviewing surviving friends and neighbors, and scouring archives for overlooked details. Yet the decades-long gap between disappearance and discovery created a chasm that could not easily be bridged. Witnesses' memories had faded, and potential suspects were long gone. The investigation revealed fragments of a story, but the full truth, the who, why, and how, remained elusive, leaving even seasoned detectives frustrated and unsettled. Psychologists and criminologists offered theories, each darker than the last. Some speculated that Mary and Lucas may have encountered someone with sinister intentions along the highway. Others suggested that the isolation and fog of the Oregon coast could have played a role in a tragic accident that left them trapped and hidden. Even with these professional opinions, the lack of definitive answers fueled speculation and fear. The story became more than a missing persons case. It became a cautionary tale about the fragility of life, the unpredictability of fate, and the shadows that lurk where no one is watching. Perhaps the most haunting aspect was the knowledge that, even with the remains recovered, the mystery would never fully leave the community. Every passerby on Highway 101, every new construction project, and every abandoned building sparked memories and theories. Mary and Lucas's story became woven into the fabric of Brookhaven, a chilling reminder that some secrets remain buried not because they are forgotten, but because they are too terrifying to uncover. And even decades later, the question lingered in every mind. What truly happened that night, and could it happen again along the quiet, fog-shrouded stretches of Oregon's highways? As the investigation stalled and the decades-old mystery remained unsolved, one chilling truth became clear. Some secrets are never meant to be uncovered, and some stories never truly end. Mary and Lucas Thompson may have been found, but the questions surrounding their disappearance still linger in the foggy corners of Highway 101. The highway itself, once just a route between towns, has become a silent witness to tragedy, a place where the ordinary and the unimaginable collide. For the people of Brookhaven, and for anyone who travels that lonely stretch of road, the story of Mary and Lucas serves as a grim reminder. Sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. And sometimes, it waits, patiently, quietly, until someone digs a little too deep. So, the next time you drive along an empty highway, listen closely. Watch the shadows. And remember, the world is full of mysteries that are better left unsolved, because you never know what might be waiting just beneath the surface.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.